Okay, so we're back. We're at the pre-conference workshop at Maulbronn, and there's a whole series on early intervention at the moment. And we have a speaker from this early intervention series, Professor Yannick Bleyenheuft from USilva in Belgium. And we have spoken before on a full podcast about Habit-ile, which you're very well known for, Yannick. What got you into this area in the first place? You know, we all love a good origin story, background and how it started. How did it start for you?
Well, the Habit-ile story actually started the day of my PhD defense.
Okay.
Because Andy Gordon was jury member and he provided a talk that was very brilliant. He always provides brilliant talks anyway.
Yes, of course.
But at that time, he spoke about habits.
Right.
And it was really like very impressive for me. I said, okay, I want to do that. I know we need that.
Yeah.
And then I went to work with him. Yeah. And when I came to work with him, I said to him, look, I've got an idea. I want to do this kind of intervention like habit, but I want to introduce lower extremity because there is nothing for lower extremity. So why shouldn't we use this window of opportunity for both upper and lower extremities? And that's the really start of the story.
And that's how it started from there. And your background, are you a physio?
Yeah, I'm physio.
It's good. So you added in the lower limb component there to make sure the whole body was looked at. And how long ago was this? How long ago did this all start?
So that was, I think, in first camp we had was in 2011.
2011.
That very first camp, Habit-ile camp, and first paper published, I think, 2015 with school-age children. And then we went to children with, it was with children with unilateral CP at that time. And then we went to children with bilateral CP because it could be, of course, translated, and there was not a lot of things for children with bilateral CP as intervention in the literature. And then we went to studies to really understand what was going on in the brain. So with MRI, with DTI, with TMS. And then a mom, a very smart and lovely mom, came to me and said, well, what you do is wonderful, but you know, my daughter has CP and she is 1 year old. And I know she needs to have what you do. I'm sorry, but we are not providing Habit-ile for such young children.
What was the youngest age at that time?
Yeah, it was 6.
6, okay, right.
And then she was so lovely, so nice, and she came back a few times and said, I really think it is needed. And finally, I had no grant. I had nothing. I said, okay, let's do a pilot. Let's do it. We have no money. We have nothing, but we're going to try.
That's incredible. I love that story because it is these questions that come from parents, from children that go, because they're the ones that often highlight where the gaps are. Yeah. They're in that place, they're looking, they're searching. So when you decided then, okay, let's look at the younger group, what are the main things that had to change and what was the same?
So the main thing was thinking about how to have them use both hands, because you cannot tell to a 1 year old child, use both hands and hope he will do it.
That's right, that's right.
And of course the schedule. Okay. Because you need those children to have a nap, definitely. So we adapted both material and schedule to have 3 hours in the morning, like from 9 to 12, and then a big nap with the parents. And then they were back at 2:30 to 4:30 for 2 more hours. So 5 hours a day, not the amount of hours we were doing with older children.
Yeah, sure. So the total dosage then?
Total dosage then is 50 hours. 50 hours? 5 hours a day during 10 days.
Over 10 days, okay. And so when you developed that, was it, you know, when they come along for their nap, is that in the clinic or do they go home or how does that work?
When they are close, they can go home, it's better. But at the really start in the pilot, it was actually in a research unit.
Oh, was it? Okay. It's what you had at the time, no funding.
Exactly, no funding, nothing. And so that was what it was. But still it worked. And with that pilot, we had really impressive changes.
Okay.
And so with the results, we could try to find some funding, and that's how we got the big funding for the CAP project, which was actually a project with many different teams, including 100 children.
Wow, that's actually pretty incredible to recruit that many. That tells you that people are interested in it. They want to be part of the research, and that it's something that's of value, because people are often looking for that, aren't they? They're looking for that early intervention.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the theoretical underpinnings of Habit-ile then in that early intervention phase? Do you mind just going through that? I know we spoke about it last time, but I always love going through it again, just to really set the scene of what are we looking at?
Actually, the idea is the same as in older children.
Beautiful.
That with the repetition, the motivation, the increase of difficulty progressively, you induce some plasticity in the brain. So you open the possibility to generate new kind of movements. You generate new voluntary motor control. That's it. The specificity in young children is that you propose that at a time where the brain is highly plastic, first. And second, you are in the first part of the development of the child. So if you have a look on a developmental curve, whatever the GMF says of children, you can see that the main change in their gross motor abilities is really, really during the first 4 years. So the slope at that time is a very steep slope, and you can hope that if you change that slope,
to make it even steeper,
you could have an influence on their whole developmental curve.
Beautiful.
That was the idea.
Yeah. And so in that then, because it's over 2 weeks, and we'll talk about some of the outcome measures in a second, so I'm very interested about that. You can, obviously when you're doing the measurements, you can tell whether it's an intervention versus natural maturation and change, because they're moving and changing a lot in that time. How do we differentiate between the two?
Actually, what we did is that we measured with accelerometers the amount of activity in both hands, both in our control group and in our treatment group. And the control group was actually children doing normal motor activity, usual motor activity, because, you know, the amount of activity a child that age usually perform is around 5 hours a day. So that was the idea, but we controlled this, we measured this with accelerometers in both groups, and we could define that in children with unilateral CP, on the non-paretic hand, we had the same amount of activity in both groups. So same amount of activity, but in the paretic hand, it was different, because on one side there was the stimulation, and on the other side it was usual use of that hand, which is not used a lot.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So talk me through now the outcome measures. How did you measure in this group of children and ages, and what did you, how did you do that? Measuring that age group is a challenge. So it's mostly, let's say, playing with the child. Instead of having the child doing exactly what you want, you play and you propose things in different situations. So for instance, the GMFM, to measure gross motor abilities, you would just propose different game play situation, and the child would just move from one thing to another, and you induce what you want. So the GMFM 66.
GMFM 66 was our primary gross motor measure, and then we use the AHA. And mini AHA, depending on the studies, for upper extremity, for children with unilateral cerebral palsy, for children with bilateral cerebral palsy, also GMFM 66, and the BOHA. And how often do you do your assessments? So assessments before starting, of course, after camp or after the same duration
for control.
For the control. And then we had at 3 months. Then after 3 months, actually, controls were benefiting from the camp. So all children in the process,
like a wait list control. That's wonderful.
Could benefit from having Habit-ile.
And how long did it take, just out of curiosity, to do a GMFM on a child that age? Especially if you're doing it from a play perspective.
It depends what the child can do. Like, it depends if the child walk or not, or
so you had a range of GMFCS levels.
Yeah.
Who was included in all of that?
So the talk here is about 4 different randomized trials. So I would say that if I take the whole range, it's between GMFCS 1 to 4.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. Okay, so can you talk us through the results and what you found in there? It's always the juicy part, but it's always good to set it up.
So in the CAP project, so that's the big European project, and actually it was funded by the Fondation Paralysie Cérébrale, the French foundation.
Oh, okay.
And we had that multicentric project with many different colleagues from Italy, from France, from Spain, from Switzerland. And in that project, there were 2 studies, each with 50 children. 50 children with unilateral CP and 50 children with bilateral CP. Right. Yep. So for children with unilateral CP, that is what is published in JAMA Pediatrics.
Yes.
We could really show large changes in the AHA.
Wow.
That was really really impressive, and also in GMFM 66.
Wow.
Well, also in other different secondary outcomes too, but I'm gonna focus mainly on the
because they are pretty impressive already.
Outcomes. And we also had very impressive changes on goals. That we measured with the COPM.
Beautiful.
So I would say that's pretty much the same for children from 1 to 4 years old with bilateral CP.
Right.
So that's new because this is unpublished.
Yeah.
This is to be submitted soon.
Okay.
But same amount of results. So we do have changes each time just after the intervention, and then still in between end of intervention and 3 months, we also have significant changes. So it's not only during the camp, but also afterwards.
And why do you think that
they
is?
Continue.
What's your theory on why they continue to improve after the intervention?
They just, I think, changed their motor abilities. And so they use what they gained, and then they gain more experience, and they continue improving.
Yeah. And I suppose that's because Habit-ile is very hands-off. It's very much about the child discovering and learning. So in actual fact then, even though it's 50 hours over 2 weeks, it's over a long period of time where you get the actual intervention effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes people go, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, when you gain those changes at 3 months, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it was the same for the bilateral.
And that's the same for the bilateral.
Oh, wow.
Exactly same. We observe same effect, except that on the upper extremity, it is BOHA and not
of course, okay, that's right.
But same effects,
So what does this mean for you and your team now? I mean, with these results and this extension into this group, what's next?
It means a lot of pressure. Because, a lot of parents absolutely want to have the intervention based on those results. It means also that we had questions, because in the data of children with unilateral cerebral palsy, we saw a difference between children of up to 36 months, so younger and older. We had a larger response in younger children. So that's why we decided to maybe say, okay, maybe at that dosage, we have a better response before 36 months, but when could we start? And that's why we went to study Habit-ile with the same protocol, but in children in between 6 and 18 months.
Oh,
so that's also part of what I'm going to explain.
That's incredible,
With large effect on upper extremity, we also had effects on gross motor ability. So GMFM also changed a lot.
Wow.
But it changed also a lot in the control group. So at that time, we think that between 6 months and 18 months, children with unilateral cerebral palsy explore so much and change so much by themselves that for lower extremity, we do not bring more than what they would naturally get. But for upper extremity, it's really different.
Those are really exciting results, and something we all need to really pay attention to. A question for you. I don't know if it's possible to do, because obviously in the older children you did neuroimaging.
Yeah.
Have you ventured or thought of, what are the possibilities for younger children?
All these children actually had neuroimaging.
Wow.
They all went, or we tried to have all of them going to MRI in spontaneous sleep. So we had to have babies spontaneously asleep, then transfer in the machine, then start the process and so on. We are still currently analyzing the results.
Wow.
Yeah, but in both, in the 3 studies that I mentioned here, we actually have MRI. Yeah.
That's incredible. Because that's always the hardest part to do in this age group.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
timing of their sleep.
We do not have the complete set of data because, you know how it is. A child that was perfect at the first assessment, then suddenly a second assessment, wake up in the middle of the session is like, oh no. And then,
that one's done. That one's done, yeah.
But still, I think it will be very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so for clinicians and researchers listening to this right now, what's the main message that you'd like them to really take away from your presentation today?
I think that it's important to realize that it's possible to be hands-off and to provide intensive treatment in very young children, and that it may have an effect that is not just a short-term but a long-lasting effect.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it is the only solution. Many of my colleagues today are presenting brilliant work with strong effects and different modalities at home, with parents in different situations. I think it's just an efficient intervention that has to be considered, and to discuss with the parents what do they want, what is adapted for them, for their child at one time. And I don't think there is one model that fits all, but I think it's a useful tool to really try to improve the abilities and the autonomy of children with CP.
Look, I love that. And because I think that's a beautiful message, because there are different approaches.
Yeah.
And we all have the same thing in mind, but the modality of how we deliver depends on our own individual preferences, isn't it? Like, I prefer to run slowly over many years and months to gradually get to where I need to get to. Some people want a good intensive 3-month course and get themselves very fit, but people have an option and a choice.
Yeah.
And if you're that way inclined and you like the intensive model and you might not have much time and you have those 2 weeks, then this is a great model to look at, and it's effective.
Yeah.
I love that. That is wonderful. It's very inspiring. Yannick, you're just brilliant in the work that you do. You teach me so much every single time that we speak, and I love following your work. So thank you so much for doing the work, for being brave and doing something unfunded just to get it all started. But this is what it takes sometimes, isn't it? And for listening to parents. So a great example of involving consumers. I hope you all really enjoyed that. I'm obviously buzzing and getting excited, which always happens when I speak with you. So thank you for sharing. And hope you enjoyed that video. There's not much more I can say because Yannick said it all. Talk to you all again next time. Bye.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Bye.